What happens when America's sweetest comedian faces one of television's most provocative hosts? What started as a light-hearted chat about family values spiraled into the most explosive late-night clash of the year. Leanne Morgan walked off, set. Andy Cohen scrambled for control, and the entertainment world hasn't stopped buzzing about what really went down. The evening began like any other promotional stop. Leanne Morgan, the Tennessee-born comedian known for her warm stories about motherhood and small-town life, was there to plug her new comedy special. Andy Cohen, master of banter and sharp questions, was ready to stir things up. At first, it was smooth sailing. Andy praised Leanne's success. Leanne answered with her trademark charm, swapping anecdotes about raising kids while juggling a demanding tour. But then Andy leaned forward with that mischievous glint his audience knows so well. Leanne, your comedy centers on traditional family values and small-town life. Do you ever worry it feels outdated to younger audiences living very different realities? Leanne's smile flickered, but her voice stayed steady. Andy, love, family, and community never go out of style. My stories may come from a small-town perspective, but the emotions are universal. Whether you're raising kids in Tennessee or New York, you're dealing with the same struggles of keeping a family together and finding joy in the little moments. Andy wasn't satisfied. He pressed harder. But don't you think, as someone with a growing platform, you have a responsibility to acknowledge that not everyone fits into that structure? Some say your comedy excludes people living different kinds of lives. The energy in the studio shifted. The warmth in Leanne's posture stiffened. Andy, I'm not excluding anyone. I tell stories about my life, my family. That's what comedians do. I'm not making political statements. I'm just laughing about the world I know. But Andy dug in deeper. You've built a brand around being the wholesome mom from Tennessee. You talk about traditional marriage, traditional roles, traditional everything. At what point do we admit that traditional often means exclusive? That's when the tone shattered. The sweet, folksy Leanne vanished. Andy, stop right there, she said, her voice suddenly sharp, commanding. You're twisting everything I've said into something it's not, and I won't sit here while you paint me as judgmental when you clearly haven't listened to a word I've said. Andy blinked, caught off guard. This wasn't the easygoing guest he expected. I'm not twisting anything. I'm asking about the impact of your messaging. Messaging? Leanne snapped. I don't have messaging. I have stories. I have a life I share. I'm not running for office. I'm not leading a movement. I'm telling jokes about my kids leaving socks on the floor and my husband forgetting the trash. That's it. The audience sat frozen. The crew didn't dare intervene. But Andy couldn't stop. When you talk about traditional families in your act, you're making a statement whether you mean to or not. Some people feel excluded by that. Leanne laughed coldly without humor. Do you know what really excludes people, Andy? Telling them their lives don't matter unless they fit into your idea of acceptable. Do you know what really excludes people? When a talk show host decides that my stories about loving my family mean I'm hating someone else's. That's what excludes. Andy tried to protest, but his trademark confidence was slipping fast. Then what exactly are you saying? Leanne shot back, her voice rising. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're saying that because I love my traditional marriage and talk about it on stage, I'm somehow responsible for making other people feel bad about their relationships. That because I think traditional values have worth, I must think non-traditional values don't. That's not logic, Andy. That's just looking for a fight. Andy tried to wrestle control of the room back. I think you're misunderstanding the broader conversation here. There's a difference between celebrating your own life and presenting it as the ideal for everyone. Leanne leaned forward, eyes locked on him. And when exactly did I do that? Show me one time, Andy. One joke, one story, one moment where I told anyone how to live. Go ahead. I'll wait. The silence that followed was damning. Andy shifted, uncomfortably in his chair. He had nothing concrete. Still, he tried. It's not always about explicit statements, Leanne. Sometimes it's about the narrative you're creating. The narrative I am creating? Leanne repeated slowly, incredulously. Her voice gained power as she continued. Andy, I've spent years telling stories about feeling like a failure, about burning dinner, about barely holding my marriage, together, about struggling as a mom. I don't sell perfection. I share my flaws. I share my insecurities. And people laugh because they see themselves in it. Her tone hardened. I never once claimed my life was ideal. Never once told anyone to live like me. And now you're twisting my vulnerability into some toxic narrative. That's not journalism, Andy. That's character assassination. The audience was dead still. Andy, rattled, tried another angle. But surely you understand that when someone with your platform celebrates certain lifestyles, it can feel like an endorsement over others. Leanne stared at him, her anger cooling into something sharper, almost pitying. Do you hear yourself? You're telling me I can't love my own life out loud because it might hurt someone else's feelings. That's not progress, Andy. That's control. That's censorship, dressed up as compassion. Andy's voice cracked. I'm just saying. There's a way to... Leanne cut him off. No. What you're saying is that my joy, my love, my truth is dangerous. And that's ridiculous. She stood. The move was sudden, decisive, electric. Crew members flinched, unsure if they should intervene. Leanne unhooked her microphone, the studio lights catching on the metal clip, as she turned to face Andy one last time. You know what the real problem is here? She asked, voice calm, now almost eerily so. It's not my stories. It's not my values. The problem is you've surrounded yourself with so many people who think exactly like you that you've forgotten the rest of the world exists. You've mistaken your bubble for reality. Andy's posture sagged. The once smirking host was gone, replaced by a man staring down the fallout of a conversation he couldn't control. Leanne shook her head, a humorless laugh escaping her. You didn't invite me here for a conversation. You invited me here for content. You wanted a headline. You wanted me to stumble so you could gloat. Well, congratulations, Andy. You got your moment. She started toward the edge of the stage, her heels striking against the floor in sharp, deliberate beats. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, realizing they weren't watching late-night fun anymore. They were witnessing a public implosion. Andy called after her, weakly, Leanne, please, let's finish this rationally. But Leanne didn't stop. She turned just once at the studio's edge, her expression fierce, her voice steady. What's really sad, Andy, is that you could have had a real conversation. Instead, you chose a circus. And I don't do circuses. With that, she walked off set. And you know what, Andy? She continued, her hand sweeping across the rows of faces in the audience. They don't need someone like you to lecture them about what their happiness should look like. They don't need late-night hosts turning their joy into a punchline or a problem to be solved. What they need is the freedom to celebrate their lives without fear of being sneered at for not fitting into some rigid narrative of what's enlightened or modern or acceptable. The crowd erupted into spontaneous applause, the kind of raw, unfiltered reaction that wasn't supposed to happen in a space so carefully choreographed. Andy's jaw tightened as the sound washed over him, his grip tightening on the edge of his desk. Leanne leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough that it felt more dangerous, more intimate. "You call this an important conversation, Andy, but what you really want is control. You want to set the terms. You want to decide who's allowed to speak and who's supposed to stay quiet. Well, I'm not staying quiet. Not tonight. Not ever again." Her words landed like a hammer. The audience, caught between tension and awe, held their breath. Andy finally forced a smile, thin and brittle. "Leanne, this is a comedy show. Don't you think you're taking this a little too seriously?" Leanne's laugh was sharp, without a trace of humor. "Comedy is serious, Andy. It's serious because it tells the truth. And the truth is, people are starving for someone who won't apologize for being who they are. That's why they come to see me. That's why they laugh. Not because I make their lives seem smaller, but because I make their lives feel seen." She turned once more toward the exit, but this time the cameras followed her like a spotlight. The applause swelled again, louder, longer, undeniable. At his desk, Andy sat frozen, his attempt to reclaim control collapsing in real time. And in that moment, it was unmistakably clear to everyone watching. Leanne Morgan hadn't just walked off a show. She had walked straight into history. And instead of celebrating that diversity of experience, we've created a culture where certain types of people feel like they have to hide who they are just to avoid being attacked. Andy's face had gone completely pale. "Leanne, that's not what I was trying to do." "Then what were you trying to do, Andy?" She shot back, her voice cutting through the silence. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you were trying to shame me for being proud of my choices. It looks like you were trying to make me feel guilty for sharing stories that resonate with people who live lives similar to mine." The confrontation had reached a pitch so raw, it made everyone in the studio uneasy, yet no one dared to look away. "You talk about inclusion and tolerance," Leanne continued, her voice trembling with intensity. "But your version of inclusion doesn't include people like me. Your version of tolerance doesn't tolerate people who find joy in living traditional lives." Her eyes glistened, and she didn't care that the cameras caught it. "Do you know how many women have come up to me after my shows just to say, 'Thank you for reminding me it's okay to love being a mom'? Do you know how many couples have told me my silly jokes about marriage made them remember why they fell in love in the first place?" She pressed her hand to her chest, steadying herself. "These are people who've been made to feel like their happiness is small, outdated, even shameful. And through comedy, I gave them back a little pride, a little joy." Andy remained frozen, behind his desk, clearly unprepared for this storm. "So when you sit here and question the impact of my work," Leanne said, her voice rising now, "you're not just questioning me. You're questioning every single person who ever felt seen in my stories. You're telling them their experiences don't matter." She drew in a long breath, then looked straight into the camera. "I refuse to apologize for that. I refuse to apologize for laughing through the messy, imperfect beauty of family life. I refuse to apologize for celebrating love and commitment. And I absolutely refuse to apologize for being happy." Then she turned back toward Andy. Her voice dropped, steady, final. "You want important conversations, Andy? Start by having an honest one with yourself about why someone else's happiness threatens you so much. because that says a lot more about you than it does about me." And with those words, Leanne Morgan walked out of that studio, leaving Andy Cohen speechless behind his desk, his audience in stunned silence, and his production team scrambling to figure out how to end the most explosive interview in late-night television history. The cameras lingered on Andy's hollow stare for several long seconds before finally cutting to commercial. But the damage was done. Everyone in that studio knew they had just witnessed something unprecedented, a moment that would be replayed, analyzed, and debated for months to come. What was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance had turned into a cultural lightning rod, exposing the deep divides in how Americans view family, values, and the right to celebrate your own choices without apology. So, what did you think about Leanne Morgan's explosive confrontation with Andy Cohen? Do you think she was right to defend her values so passionately? Or did she overreact to legitimate questions about her platform? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more shocking celebrity moments that you won't see anywhere else.